Hi, I'm Kimmy WD, and this is Ethan Leeds, a holistic nutritionist. The other day, I posted on my Facebook page asking a question of what supplement was the first one that you've ever used that you really liked. And there was a few of you who talked about vitamin D. So Ethan is here today to go over a little bit about vitamin D, things that you may or may not know, and whether it's really healthy for you or not.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, this is a topic that has become very important because vitamin D is being heavily pushed originally by doctors, but now it's really got into the natural health world as well. And it's being pushed as a supplement that you should be taking, that is going to help your immune, and it's going to help you in various other ways. And it's one of the most heavily pushed single supplements on the market. And so I think that we need to ask ourselves a few questions about D. And I'm going to share some information that many people are not aware of it, although more and more people are becoming aware over the last few years, I've noticed. So the first thing to say about vitamin D is that it's not a vitamin. So that's the first thing. So they've put the word vitamin in there, in my opinion, as part of a manipulation to get people to take it, because it's actually a hormone. And if they said that, far less people would be taking it. But if they say vitamin, I say vitamin, by the way. But if they say vitamin, people are used to the idea that they should take their vitamins. So this is just another vitamin. It's an easy step to just, let's add in D. So people are watching this may already get the clue that I'm not going to be being very positive about supplementing with D, and that's true. I'm not, and by the end of this, hopefully, you won't be either. So it's not a vitamin. That's the first thing. So you're supplementing with a hormone. You need to understand that, and hormones are incredibly powerful. That's the first thing. And one of the other red flags is, if you think about it, if you ask the question, what foods are D in, you're going to come up with a very short list. None of them are plants. When we're talking D3, there is a D2 in certain mushrooms and some plants, but D3, which is the one that's being recommended to be supplemented with, it's not in plants, it's only in animals. That's because it's a hormone. So you get it in some fish and a very, very limited range of foods. And again, if we really need all this D and we're all deficient, like, why is it not in the food? It should be in the food, right? Another kind of red flag, there's a very famous disease associated with vitamin D deficiency. And I'm going to probably stop calling it vitamin D as I go through this. Just stick to D because, as I say, it's not a vitamin. But you can be deficient in D. It's possible to be deficient in the hormone. And the symptoms or the disease associated with that is called rickets. And it used to be quite common in the days when they used to have kids working in chimneys and factories 24/7, what have you. They never saw the daylight. It used to be quite common. Kids would have rickets, and that's where the legs would kind of bow like this. But you're not going to see many people today in America or the UK or the countries that we'd probably be familiar with. You're not going to see many people with rickets, which you should be seeing if we were to believe all the claims about D deficiency. But we're not seeing the evidence of that. So the next thing that we need to be aware of is the D that most people are supplementing with, it called cholecalciferol, is actually made from irradiated sheep's wool. And it's a synthetic form of D. And it's not dealt with by the body in the same way that D made from sunlight is made. So it's very important to distinguish between D that you might make from sun, or even D that you eat in the few foods that have it. That's fine. Cholecalciferol that we're being told to supplement with by doctors and naturopaths even is very, very different in the way that the body handles that. And it's actually the active ingredient in rat poison. Now, they're going to argue about that because they're going to say it's the dose. It's a poison. And in any dose, it's a poison. And in a higher dose that they give to rats, it's a poison sufficient to kill them fairly quickly. In a human, with the amounts that we're taking, it's not going to kill you particularly quickly, but it is going to cause all kinds of problems over time. In particular, around calcium, it causes calcium deregulation, which is how it kills rats, by the way. And it really messes with people in many ways around, especially around calcium. And it basically, however much D you have in your blood, this synthetic cholecalciferol, however much you have, your body has to match it with that much calcium. And most of us don't have that much calcium, right? So what it does then is it starts to drag calcium from your bones and other places to fulfill that role. And then it dumps it. And then you end up with bone spurs and cataracts and furring up of the arteries and all kinds of problems created by excess calcium. Excess, you've had it dragged out of your bones. So it's a nasty stuff. So the answer then is, if you feel that you're calcium D deficient, then get it from food. Like with all other nutrients, our nutrients should come from food, not from synthetics. In the term, when it comes to vitamins, when it comes to minerals, not from crushed rocks and what have you. We should get it from food. Now, how is it that they pull this deception off? Because there are many people who will tell you that they've had benefits from taking it, right? And there are many people who say, well, look, I'm low in D, so I should be taking D, surely. So first of all, you have to understand that the test that they do to show that you're low in D is on a similar level to the test that they do to show you have COVID. It's completely bogus. It's probably not quite as bogus as the COVID one, but it's not far off. Let me explain what they do to convince you that you're low on D. And then the same test is used to prove that D is beneficial. And I'll explain exactly how that works. And just by the way, before I get into that, it's very possible to have positive effects of taking D. Just like you can have positive effects of taking steroids. It's more like a steroid, actually, steroidal hormone. So it behaves like that. So it can dampen symptoms. It can. And so you can feel better on D. And it dampens symptoms by crushing your immune system, the opposite of what you're told. So when your immune system is suppressed, many of the uncomfortable symptoms that we have are caused by the immune fighting something. So, for example, a fever is an immune response to something, but it's not nice. When you have a fever, it's not nice, but it's the immune attacking something in your body that needs attacking. So there are many symptoms that we have that our immune does, that if we have a suppressed immune, we don't have those symptoms. And so it feels good. I have a lot of people telling me, for example, so I spent many years specializing in cancer, and I would have people riddled with cancer telling me that they were really healthy apart from the cancer. If they just didn't have the cancer, they're super healthy. And I heard this over and over again. And they had some logic behind their statement, because the reason they would say that is because when something went around, when the flu went around or whatever, they would never get it. Everyone would be dropping around, getting fever and chills and all those things, and they wouldn't. They'd be like, wow, my immune's really good. No, your immune's not really good. Your immune is so weak that it's not reacting to this attack, right? So they felt, because they weren't having the symptoms of fever and chills and all the things that go along with flu, they thought, yeah, I'm strong. No, it's the opposite. So it's very possible to be fooled into thinking something that suppresses your immune is actually good. That's why they use things to suppress the immune, wrongly, in my opinion, but they use it on autoimmune diseases, right? Because an autoimmune disease, your immune is fighting something, and that's creating symptoms. And so they give you a drug to suppress the immune, and then you feel better. But that's not a good way of feeling better. It's not a healthy way to do it. And so some people will swear blind D is good because they've felt those benefits of having their immune suppressed while being told that their immune is being boosted. So let me get back now to what I was about to say about the testing. So there are many types of D in your body. And that's another thing. When we go in the sun, we make a mass of different chemicals, not just D3, but they just focus on the ones they want to focus on and ignore the rest. So you really want to get in the sun. The sun is doing stuff that there's no supplementation for. Anyway, when they measure, when they decide to look at your D level, there's a lot of different Ds they could look at, but they only look at a very specific area. So let me explain. So we're going to split D into two major camps. So you've got active D and inactive D. So active D is the D that's doing stuff in your body, and inactive D is the stored D that's not doing anything. It's there if your body needs it, but it's not actually being used in that moment. Okay, so of those two groups, obviously the most important group is the active D, the D that's actively fighting and doing stuff in your body. So it might come as a surprise for people to learn that when they test your D levels, they utterly ignore your active D. They act as if it's not there. Okay, so that's gone. We're ignoring that. So they're only going to look at the stored D. Now, there are at least 14 different variations of stored D. Okay, so what they're going to do when they test you is they're going to ignore 12 of those 14. So they go off the table as well. So there's only two forms of stored D that they're going to look at, and it's called D25. So that's what they're going to look at. And if I can give an analogy as to what that would be like, Kim, imagine, Kim, for a minute that they were going to make you mayor of New York. Okay. You never know with the way that they do these elections now.
You never know.
Right, they're going to make you the mayor of New York. So you become the mayor, and the previous people you don't trust at all. You've got to make a lot of policies on what to spend money on and so on. And you need to know how many people are in New York. Okay? So you decide to do a count. So you send your people out to do a count and count everybody in New York so that you can then use those numbers to make your projections and decide how much you're going to spend. All right. So they do that. They come back. They give you a number. You then make all your projections, and it's a disaster. Nothing works, nothing as you thought it would. Then you discover that here's what they actually did. So when they went out to count everybody in New York, they ignored all the active people. So all the people that are at work, on the street, going from A to B, all of that, they're the active ones, right? That's all ignored. So all those people, they didn't count. They only counted the inactive people in their homes. That's all they did, okay? However, they didn't count all the inactive people in their homes. The ones that were watching TV, cooking and cleaning, chatting and playing on video games, whatever, they ignored those. They only counted the inactive ones that were actually in sleep in bed. Okay, so they counted all the asleep people in bed at the time of the count, and then they came back to you as mayor of New York and gave you that number as the population. Now, you obviously can see that's absolutely ridiculous and it would cause a disaster. That's exactly what they're doing with D, right? They're ignoring all the active, they're only looking at inactive, but then they're ignoring most of the inactive and just looking at a little segment of the inactive and giving you that as your D number. Now, it's worse than that, because what used to be considered low, a low figure, they changed the chart. So when I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I'll make it up. So when it used to be if you were 60 or below, you were low. Okay, so that was the chart, and they overnight, a few years back, changed it to 30. So all the people between 30 and 60, so they basically halved the score. I'm losing track of my numbers for a second, but they halved the score of what was considered low to make a lot more people low. They did that as well. So it's a complete charade. It's a complete charade. So that is what they're doing. Now, then what they do is this. So if you're sick, they will measure your D, and they will often find and we're talking about these two inactive substrates of D. They'll measure those, and they often will find they're low. And what they will do is they'll make a correlation. You've got low D and you're sick, therefore low D is the cause of your sickness. So people that have got low D seem to get sick. That's what they'll do. So they'll say, they'll make this correlation, and correlation is not causation. So in other words, you can't draw a correlation and draw a hard conclusion from that, because just because there's a correlation doesn't mean it's the cause. And in this case, it certainly isn't. And I'll explain why. So it is true that a lot of sick people do have low D in these two substrates, but it's not because they're low that they're sick. It's the opposite way around. It's because they're sick that they're low. And here's how we know that. Because if they measured the active D, they would find that the sick people were all high in D, not low. They're low in the substrate because it's being used to make more D because they're sick. So when you get sick, you need more D. So your body makes more D, which lowers the inactive. Okay, so the sickness comes first, and then the low inactive D follows. Okay, so it's the exact opposite. They have a tendency to do this, can turn things on their head by the way that they look at it and the way that they extract conclusions from correlations. So usually when you're low in the two substrates of D that they tell you that you're low in, it's usually because you're actually high in D. So there actually is a purpose in measuring those two substrates, because it is a marker of something. It's a marker of high D. And the usual reason for high D is that your body's under attack in some form, and it's often inflammation. So if you've got low substrates of D, the answer is not to supplement with D. The answer is to do something to fight inflammation. And when your inflammation gets under control, then your body can relax its D back to normal levels, and you'll be fine. So that's a use in the D, but it's no use whatsoever telling you that you're low in D. And in fact, everyone worries about in the winter, my D is going to drop, but they don't realize that their D doesn't drop in the winter. It doesn't. Right? I mean, we've survived as a species very well in very, very many northern climates where there's not a lot of sun for a chunk of the year. We've done very well without supplementing in D. How have we done so well? Right? Well, our D doesn't drop in the winter. It only drops in the inactive substrates that they're looking at. But your active D doesn't. Right? So we're pretty good. Our body's pretty good at keeping things in balance, and hormones in particular, it has to, because hormones are incredibly potent. So our body does a good job of keeping them balanced. So in the winter, I'm from the UK, there's very little sun in the UK, but you know, we survive without supplementation, those of us that don't supplement, without any problem whatsoever, because we make enough when there's sun. We don't actually need that much sun. We make enough to create enough stored D so that in the winter we can go through without it affecting us. Now, if for whatever reason you are actually low in active D, which is not common, very uncommon, there's a few specific diseases that can bring that about, but for the most part, you're not going to be low in D. But if you are, then the thing to do, rather than take cholecalciferol synthetic hormone passed off as a vitamin, instead of doing that, then eat the foods that have D, and or get one of those lights, one of those sunlight lights, and use that in the winter, in your office, in your home, or whatever, and make D more naturally the way that you would make it from sunshine. However, there's not many people that need that, but if somebody really feels they absolutely must have D, then they just can't accept. The doctors told them they're low in D. They can't get their head around what I've just explained. They just feel they have to have D. Then get one of the lights, cod liver oil, something like that. Butter, animal products only. That's the only thing that's going to get you D3. Okay, so that then is really the story of D in a nutshell, without me getting too deep, and why, yet again, people have been conned with pseudoscience, getting them to do something that they think is healthy for them that's actually harming them. And sometimes they get very resistant. We know the people that have done this, that think it's healthy for them, that we all know is harming them, and they get very belligerent about it when you tell them it's harming them. And some of the D people do the same. They get very belligerent about it, but the science is the science. When you get past the pseudoscience correlation stuff that they use to try and show that people are suffering when they're low in D. When you get past that and dig a little bit deeper, it's very, very clear. We really shouldn't be supplementing with D. That's not a good way to go. What we should be doing is fighting inflammation, removing toxins, supporting immune, those kind of things. They're all going to be much more beneficial. So, any questions that you have, Kim, or anything that you'd like me to add on?
No, that was pretty straightforward, and I'm learning, like lots of people, you know, when you have a serious health scare, you tend to start to dive a little bit deeper and try to figure out, you know, what's going to help you and what's not. Henceforth, why I did that post to ask some questions. So this is really good information. Thank you.
Awesome.